Hi everyone, I am Zeiss, and on this channel I turn you into an RPG master. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure to smash this subscribe button and also the notification bell to keep in touch. And if you already did that, you probably remember this. Let's see how it translates to Diablo 4 Season 4 Loot Reborn on hardcore. So here's my seasonal hardcore character, third for the season. I already played Blood, Search and Lance to get rich quick and play whatever else I want. I also played Blight, destroyed some 50 something tier pits, and I wanted to play something different, so here it comes. Now you'll notice I'm using Skeletons, Bone Storm, Corpse Tendrils, Decrepify, Bone Prison and Bone Spear. Let's talk some gear first, and then I'm gonna explain exactly what I'm doing. Probably no Bone Spear Necromancer could go without this helmet. It's because of the unique power that, because of the explosions, which also probably not many manage to master because it has two radiuses for optimal damage, mostly the last one. I already talked about this a lot. It's usually the radius, which is the distance from the character to the health bar of the enemy. This distance, when the Bone Spear returns, it can also hit up to 8 times per cast, because the Bone Spear projectile hits, then the splinters, when the Bone Spear crits, it returns 5 of them, and also 2 explosions. So what's that? Like 1 plus 5 plus 2. Yeah, that's 8. I can do math. Okay. So the thing is that there's another radius between the other 2 explosions, but it's less optimal. If you're not aiming like this, you're probably not playing Bone Spear. Bone Spear is just some skill on your HUD. So aim for a distance like this. You see where those reapers are? Right here, actually above me. That's a somewhat optimal distance to aim at the enemy at. To be at that kind of distance. Okay. Let's move on to the gear. Now, this could have rolled better, but I guess it will do. I'm using also Soulbrand here for the damage reduction on demand, basically, either by casting Bone Storm or by drinking a potion. The gloves, I could want more from them, like critical strike damage instead of the Bone Spear here. I think it will do better, we'll see. But maybe Lucky Hit could also do. But let's stick to what we have here, right? Attack speed, critical strike chance, Bone Spear, critical strike damage, and chance to stun. Also, the aspect of serration to drastically increase our damage. On the pants, I have here intelligence, armor, dodge chance, and lucky hit chance to stun with the aspect of shielding storm. This is how we generate barrier besides the potion and the soul brand. If you don't have soul brand, you can use something like life, intelligence, essence per second, stuff like that, right? And for the tampering, maybe dodge chance and tendril size. Okay, moving on. Now for the boots, because I'm using the aspect of metamorphosis here, I have the implicit to be +2 evade charges. So because I'm not a really big fan of Blood Mist, so to say, like I've said many times, we are a Necromancer here and we are the enemy's worst nightmare. We're not gonna run away like a pussy from the enemies. So here goes. Life, essence per second, movement speed, chance to stun again. And also, let's move on to the weapon here. I have intelligence, life, critical strike chance, bone critical strike damage, critical strike damage, bone critical strike damage, and also it's a sword, so it has an implicit critical strike damage, and chance to cast bone spear twice. Also, this splintering aspect here, probably pretty standard stuff. Now for the amulet, I usually go like this, like movement, speed, armor, resource cost, and devotion. Well, in this case, we can also get life, or we can also get lucky hit, or we can get critical strike chance. Although with the bone storm, it's pretty decent. Now I'm using here the aspect of hardened bones on the amulet to get the most out of the damage reduction, because as you probably know, damage reduction is very premium this season, right? So let's move on here to the first ring. If you use now the sacrilegious soul, you should go, I believe, with a shadow resistance ring, and because of the sacrilegious soul is a poison resistance ring, if you don't use it, I'll show an alternative later on in the video. But the only ring to use to be the most optimal is a shadow resistance ring, because you can get poison resistance and shadow resistance on the Paragon board, and without using skulls you can cap the other resistances and the armor. So in this case you can get dodge chance as well, really important for this build. Now we're getting quite the ring here actually. A lot of life, attack speed, critical strike chance, and resource cost reduction. It's also with the aspect of torment. I would prefer to use torment here instead of exposed flesh, because I believe it works better and without having to attack. You just restore resource without having to attack. Especially helpful for the bosses. It is where it is felt the most. Now, sacrilegious soul, not much to talk about here. You should probably aim at getting the best throw possible on the unique power, and as much as life and essence possible. Well, in my case, lucky hit chance is a greater affix, which is really good for the stunning. Okay. Now, you probably noticed I used some gems here to cap my resistances. 70, pretty easy. And you also notice on the left, next to the pants, the armor is capped, slightly over the cap of 9,230. But when I keep master working, I will also get rid of some armor nodes on the Paragon node to keep it at this point to be more optimal, and increase something else like the damage or whatever. Now for the shield here, I'm using intelligence, life. Unfortunately, damage reduction is not a great affix here, but we have more dodge chance and more chance to stun. Now you might be wondering, I have here the protecting aspect, right? It's really useful on hardcore now that we don't have the elixir of death evasion. And no, the armor pieces I've socketed with rubies to increase my health. Now with the elixir of anti-venom here and fortitude, I can drastically increase my health up to 51k, which eventually, maybe after like the pit tier 50 something, that will not be enough. Definitely not be enough. So we'll see what we can do when we reach there. I'm currently clearing with this character tier 30 to 50 to start master working my gear, because I don't know if I actually mentioned, I leveled this character during the night. It's brand new, so let's see how it will progress. I believe that covers the gear here. It's you can actually do some alternative things, like it don't aim to be like very exact in things, because That's something you should reserve, I believe, when tampering your last gear piece. For example, I have here dodge chance and dodge chance, but if it rolls total armor, I could try to roll the dodge chance here on the amulet instead and stuff like that. Like make sure to be near the cups or have as much dodge as possible. And it will be very intuitive on how to proceed. If not, let me know in the comments and we'll discuss. Alright, let's move on to the Book of the Dead here. Now I am using Reapers to generate corpses. I will get to why, mostly on the Paragon, but corpses really helpful to cast tendrils, to restore resource, and to pretty much get more damage reduction as well if you walk around them. And also damage, but we'll get to that in a moment. Now skeletal mages, I am using here the bone mages with this upgrade here to fortify, because they removed bone prisons fortify, right? Why did they even do that? But anyway, so they are basically forcing us to play with minions here. Maybe they were underutilized or something, if you know what I mean. The other way to fortify is to use corpse explosion and exhumation. Unfortunately, I don't have any slot for that, and I could use it instead of the skeletons, but they're tanking for me quite nicely, so I wouldn't do that. That's like the better option, and feels like the only option, which kind of destroys the game for me, but you know, it is what it is. Now, for the golem, I sacrificed the iron golem to get more damage, because after, let's say, the pit tier 50 or nightmare dungeons tier 90 plus, you will definitely feel the damage need if your damage is below 500,000 or something per hit. And remember, we can do up to 8 per hit per cast, right? So make sure to stack damage. So here's my skill tree. My basic skill is bone splinters. It doesn't really matter at this point because I'm no longer using it. Maxed bone spear. Initially, while leveling, if you level with bone, which is kinda nuts, but if you do, you can use supernatural bone spear, and then when you get the splintering aspect, respect to paranormal bone spear. Now, Hewitt flesh is maxed out, also imperfectly balanced. At 1 point to Grim Harvest, because we don't really need it because of the aspect on the ring. 3 to Fueled by Death to increase the damage. Now initially, when you deal with easier content, you can use Death's approach, but for the harder stuff I recommend this, because monsters are fast. They will get to you, which is not the idea on a ranged build, but it might happen. No matter that we have skeletons, we have bone prison, we have bone storm in case that happens, right? But this drastically helps to either kill them if they're on low health, or to reduce their damage, basically, and to reduce the damage, because if they get to you, they will keep on hitting you unless you do something. Now, also we have here a Decrepify with enhanced and abhorrent to decrease cooldowns, and to that's actually really useful to reduce the cooldowns, and also to stun. And together with the stun that I have on the gear, you can imagine also together with the corpse tendrils what this does to bosses and what it will do when it's masterworked. Their stagger bar goes brrr. Sorry, I just didn't sleep. Everything is very funny to me, and I'm usually not like this, but okay. So skeletal mage mastery here, because bone mages, they when they attack, they lose health. They're dying a lot, so This is just to make them tanky. Their damage is just funny, but we're using them mostly to fortify. That's additional 15% damage reduction. 15 damage reduction, that's pretty good. So the less they die, the better, right? I guess if I change that, like if it's worth making a follow-up video, I will definitely do. But for now, I'm using this. And here I have Corpse Tendrils with enhanced and plagued to make enemies vulnerable. I already make them vulnerable with a bone spear, but keeping them vulnerable definitely helps. Trust me, it does. Now, the other thing here really important for every bone build, well, what every bone build, there's like just a couple, but yeah, sedation, compound fracture, and also evolution. Evolution, I believe, is the most important one. And at least one point here on the rapid dosification to further reduce cooldowns. Now, I forgot to mention here the bomb prison. I am using the upgrade Dreadful Bomb Prison to further reduce cooldowns. So you can imagine what I'm doing here with pretty much constant Bone Storm. Um, I'll get to that later, right? But pretty much also keeps the cooldowns down. More Tendrils, more Bone Storm, and also more Bone Prison. Pretty cool. Here I have Inspiring Leader for critical strike chance, right? And also Bonded in Essence, because like I said, those skeletons, they just die a lot. Also Bone Storm with both upgrades, and of course the Ossified Essence, which used to be very powerful, now not so much, but still, it's still very good. Let's move on to the Paragon board here. Now, I've been modifying it a lot while leveling to make it more and more optimal depending on where I am, but let's see what I have here. And I'll try to explain what I did while leveling. So here I have Gravekeeper, but I didn't start with it, right? I believe I started with Corporeal here, because Corporeal is or if you have Amplify, you can also start with Amplify. Pretty much start with the glyph that you're going to use on the next board, so you can level it while get there. But I have here Gravekeeper, and the important notes for life, it's obvious, damage, and also the requirements for Gravekeeper. Now, because I don't need the armor and I could use the willpower here, I chose to go this path, but initially it's okay to get the armor, both armors, you know, move on, so you don't have to rely on the gear that much to get the armor. Now, when you get to this second board, it is called Bone Graft. Immediately go here first, because it's maximum essence, essence on kill, maximum essence. You can actually also use those two, right? Then move on here to get the actual Bone Graft, or then move on to get this damage, and then move on to get the glyph. Amplify is pretty cool here because it drastically increases resistances and damage. Now after that I move on here to get the extra life. If you need the armor nodes, get them too, and then respec them when no longer needed. For the armor, I already mentioned in a previous build video how I calculate the armor. But if you play on PC, it's probably really easy to just hover over the armor and see what your armor cap is. Now, while leveling, we usually fight at least level 10 levels higher monsters. So I'm using a calculator to see what armor is required for which monster. I'll link it in the description so you can check it out. It's made by community member Zario, so it's still valid since season 1 up until you reach the cap to level 100 monsters, which is 9230. Okay, now that that's cleared, let's move on here to the next board. It is Sand of Death. The first thing to get here is the damage, then this, then the glyph. or if you need shadow resistance, first get the shadow resistance. After you get the glyph, you can move here corporeal. You can initially move it from here, right? Because it's a lot of movement speed. The idea is to get it early on. Just move it here. That will be fine because it's easier to get here both dexterity glyph and intelligence glyph. The others not so much. But here it's harder to get a dexterity glyph. So I'm using here, I just move corporeal. Then I'm getting this critical strike damage. If you need armor, you can easily get this part. Now, if I solve the poison resistance otherwise here, and if I don't have armor on the gear, I could use this armor here and get additional damage to injured enemies, right? Something like, it's a variation. The Paragon board is usually very fluid and like this. Then I moved on here to Flesh Eater, and I'm currently using here Exploit. Initially, I'm using here Essence, right? With only this part of the board. When I get the glyph, I usually level this glyph to level 15 by that time as well. Then I'm moving on to getting this one, Flesh Eater, and then this damage here. Now what we can do actually is something like this, get either vulnerable or critical. You can micromanage like this. Now in my case I also got here the armor and the poison resistance to cut my armor and the resistances. Then lastly I'm moving here to Bloodbath. And when I get here I'm swapping the place of Essence and this one, right? Exploit, because this one is more dexterity, and for the build currently critical strike damage is more important because of the helmet. The helmet's unique power, the explosions. And here we get more damage while fortified. We fortify with the mages anyway, and more health and more damage while fortified. So that's basically the Paragon board. Nothing fancy, nothing complex. It's just couple of times glyph swapping to be more optimal. That's it. Okay, let's talk some gear alternatives here. Now, for easier content, it's really easy and convenient to actually use the lidless wall, because it keeps the bone storm up, and this tremendously helps with easier content, survivability, and critical strike damage, stuff like that. But if you do harder stuff, especially on hardcore, I believe the protecting aspect is much better. It's better to not be one-shotted to death, like when you get the bubble, you can use the scroll of escape, while if you have lidless wall and the damage reduction is not enough, you just die. So you get the idea. I was talking about an alternative chest piece, so here it is, something like this. If it has greater affixes, that would be nice. And also alternative pants, something like. If it has greater affixes, it would be nice. Now, when I keep on master working, I will probably start getting rid of this chance to stun if it gets too high. So I can actually get tendril size or something else, like decrepify size. We'll see. Here's some ring we can actually use instead of the ring of sacrilegious soul, life, critical strike chance, critical strike damage, critical strike chance, resource cost reduction. Now, because I already have here the torment aspect, if I use this ring instead of the sacrilegious soul, I could use the grasping veins aspect. Now, the problem with sacrilegious soul this season is that it doesn't trigger grasping veins. It does trigger corpse tendrils, but not grasping veins. I don't know if that's a bug or intentional. It used to work, but now it doesn't. So it's kind of hard to decide whether it's a good ring anymore or not. But something like this to keep the crit chance up all the time, that would also help without having the sacrilegious soul to autocast Corpse Tendrils. So you probably noticed I'm an ethical hardcore player, so to say, and I guess that covers the build. I would definitely want to see how it will progress from now on, and how far could it push. Probably not much, but if not, I'm probably gonna respect to something else and try different things and make another video, which I'm going to see you at, right? Let me know in the comments what you think about all this, and yeah, Zeiss out. Take care.